very happy to be live with Kate Foster, the other member of our debut panel list. Do you want to start off by telling us a bit about yourself and your book, Kate?
Hi, everybody. So my name's Kate Foster, and I'm the author of a historical fiction novel called The Maiden. The Maiden is based on a true story of a Scottish aristocrat who was condemned to death for a crime of passion in Edinburgh in the 17th century. It happened in the village that I grew up in, which is an area of Edinburgh called Corstorphine, and I grew up knowing about this crime. So as an adult, I decided to retell the crime from a much more modern perspective.
Which is, it is no secret to anyone in this group that I'm like a really big fan of these books, your book. I don't think I've shut up about it in the group since I've read it. Everyone like, I've always been like, my favourite book is.
Thank you. That's good. It makes all the hard work worthwhile when somebody enjoys reading it, because it can be quite a long process to actually write it.
But the other really sort of confidence-raising thing I would imagine as a debut author is being put on like a list, like the debut list or the McIlvenney list, because you're up there with some amazing company.
Oh, it's incredible because you know, I didn't expect any of it, to be honest with you. So The Maiden it won a prize. It won an award called Pitch Perfect, which was the Bloody Scotland showcase for new writing. So that was basically a kind of a pitching contest that I took part in when I hadn't finished the book at all. It was just about the idea of it. So it did win that, and that was you know, an incredible experience, and it gave me such a huge amount of confidence to kind of actually finish the story. But I sort of just, for me the thing was just to try to get the book published, and the kind of goal was to be able to see it in a bookshop. I mean, that was really what it was for me. So anything that happens beyond that is beyond expectations. And obviously, I mean, some of the other authors on there, I mean, there's quite, you know, there's some big names, particularly on the McIlvenney long list. So I was just, you know, I was just so thrilled by it, really, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's so you're going to be at the. Is there a debut panel interview?
Yes, we are going to do something on the Friday night. So we're going to do a panel on Friday evening, all of us who are on the debut shortlist. And I think there's also the award will be announced on Friday, as well as the McIlvenney Prize. So there's a torchlit procession. So we're all going to, we get to go in that because we're on the debut shortlist, which is exciting. So take part in that through Stirling. So I went to Stirling University. I probably started there 31 years ago, not that I'm counting. And it was just such a lovely thing to be going back around the time of Freshers' Week, to be celebrating, you know, this kind of piece of writing that I've done. I don't think I would have imagined that.
Have you? Would your university be interested in you going back and doing like a chat to them about being an author? You know, it's like a successful kind of graduate.
I don't know. There's quite a lot of successful graduates from Stirling. I don't know about that. But I am excited because I've been, since the book's been published, which it was published in April, and I'm going to be doing quite a lot of talks locally in Corstorphine, because it's, you know, it's based on a true event which became part of the village folklore, really. So there was a little bit of interest from the local library and also from the local literary society, the Probus group. So I'm actually the most excited about just going back into Corstorphine and just talking about the book with people who actually will have been as familiar with the story as I was when I was growing up. So that's the thing I suppose I'm quite nervous about, really, because it's what will they think, you know, but also I just think the most satisfying kind of thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you like. But I think when you go back to, I actually live in the town I went to university in. Still, I just didn't move away. I'm lazy. But I think it's kind of nice to go back into the grounds of your old university when you've been away for a bit. And
yeah, very poignant thing to do. I wrote, I didn't write the Maiden, so I wrote the Maiden kind of more recently, but I was writing another book a few years ago, and I actually went to the university and stayed there for a week or so just to kind of do some intense writing, and finished it in the grounds of the university, in the library actually, and that book didn't get published at all. But it's nice to kind of to be able to kind of go back in there with with actually an actual finished item. And just so the university is not in the town; it's just outside the town. But I'm going to be going up there. I'm going to make some time just to go into the campus and just to kind of have a walk around, and just just have some time just to familiarise myself with it again.
So one of the questions we've asked all of the authors who've been on the kind of McIlvenny debut interview so far has been to introduce your main character.
Well, Christian's my main character, isn't she? So, oh goodness me. So Christian, oh dear. So Christian's a young woman. She's a very well-to-do aristocrat. She is the oldest of two sisters and has a feeling of not being quite as beautiful as her younger sister. And when we meet Christian, her younger sister's about to be married at a very high society wedding, and Christian's feeling really unhappy with herself because she's unwed. However, she meets a man who is a good match for her, Andrew Nimmo, and she marries him. But the marriage is very loveless, and so she eventually falls for the charms of an older man who's in her life. Christian is a woman who is she's a historical character. She was a real person. But I think she's a person who would just be like me or anybody or any of my friends. She's a modern woman who has the same humanity as all of us, who is just put in a very difficult situation of wanting to be loved and not being loved, and that all going really tragically wrong for her in a society where women are expected to behave in a certain way. And she doesn't. She has an affair with this man, James Forrester. He's abusive towards her, and she reacts to that, and she kills him. So the consequences of that are just enormous for her. So she is probably somebody who is just born in the wrong century.
It's a good description. And I think the interesting thing about your book, so I'd imagine some of the people watching, like Steve and Leslie, who might not have read it yet, would be thinking that you've probably given away some spoilers there. But actually, because it's a real person and anyone can go away and Google them, nothing you've said is, the point is more about how they get to the places that they get to, isn't it? Like everyone knows what happens, but
you can, yes, you can Google what happened, and my version of the story doesn't really follow the actual historical facts very closely, because some of them just didn't fit in with my vision of what I wanted to write. So I took a lot of liberties, and I'm quite open about that. There's another character in the book who I think is another example. So the reason why I wanted to tell the story was because I thought that there's a lot of women, historical women, whose stories we just don't know about, because history is generally told by men, and I felt Christian's story was being told by men because she's being portrayed as a really horrible woman, as a murderess, as an adulteress, as a whore. All these horrendous words were spoken of her. And I wanted to just give, and she was never getting the chance to speak, and I wanted to give her a voice. So my voice that I give her is basically my voice. I don't know what she was at all like as a person, there are similarities in what happened to my fictional account as to what happened in our historical books about the murder. But there's also just, you know, I've got another character in there called Violet. So the story's told from the perspectives of Christian and Violet. Violet is an entirely fictional character who's another of, she's a kind of love rival, isn't she, to Christian for the affections of James Forrester, the murder victim. And she also perhaps has motives to put Christian in the frame for the murder. And again, so she's not a real person, but I imagine her to be so vivid and to be, you know, such a representation of women who were really living in poverty in Edinburgh in the 17th century, who just had to survive by their wits. And Violet does that. You know, she's working in she works in the sex industry. She's working in a brothel. Life's not been good to her, and she's got to kind of make some difficult choices in order to survive, and kind of do as well as she can. So really, we've got two women who are kind of pitted against each other, but actually they are very similar. You know, one's, you know, from the kind of upper classes and one's not, but they're both experiencing the kind of pressures on them from the society that they're living in.
Donna's also said hello as long as Sam. Donna said she loved your book.
Oh, thank you, Donna. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'd always say it just makes the hard work worthwhile when somebody enjoys it, reading the book.
We're going to touch on this now, because you told me just as we were waiting to go live that you have finished book 2.
Yeah, that's right. So I finished a big structural edit of book 2 last week. So that means, when I say that, I mean I wrote it and have made some quite big revisions to the manuscript, and so I found that really tough. I found writing The Maiden quite easy. Believe it or not, it was a book that I wrote in lockdown, and I was just in a position where I had the time and the emotional energy to just sit and write a novel. Once I came out of that and I had to kind of think about the second book, I thought, that's great. I wanted to write it, but it was a different experience, and I found it really challenging. And I think that's probably more reflective of the writing process. So the second book is going to come out in June. It's called The King's Witches, and it's another historical retelling. And it really tells the story of how. So it's based around the Scottish witch trials of the 16th century, the late 16th century, and it tells the story of how witch panic came to Britain, and that happened with the arrival of King James of Scotland's wife, Anna of Denmark. And when she came to Scotland to marry James, there was a terrible storm that just about capsized her ship. She arrived in a huge fleet. And at that time in Scandinavia, there was a lot of witch burnings happening. There had been a massacre in a place called Trier, which is in modern day Germany, and witchcraft was really the thing over there. And James heard about this, and the admiral of the fleet, he wasn't going to take any responsibility for the disaster. Himself, and he said, "Oh, I think it was probably witches who actually, nearly capsized the fleet. It wasn't my bad decision making around sailing in a storm." And so James became really excited about this, and he blamed the weather event on witches in Denmark and in North Berwick in Scotland, conspiring to capsize the boat. And they found a bunch of men and women to blame, and James held the trial. And he was so interested in this that he then wrote a book called Demonology, which basically became the Bible for modern day witch hunting as we know. And that was what really triggered a lot of the witch hunts that we actually had in Britain after that, because before that they had been quite sporadic. But this really triggered things like witch pricking and, you know, mass hunting and accusing your neighbour. So it became this much more frightening time. Just, you know, just after James had written this instruction manual. So it's a totally fascinating event. And actually, but what I wanted to do was look at the source of that, and of course look at Anna of Denmark. I immediately had to start writing her as a character. She just became, I just became really obsessed with her. And she wore great, huge farthingale hooped gowns that were just, you know, huge. And she was really fashionable, a really young woman. In his history, she's kind of seen as quite frivolous because she liked kind of festivals and art. But actually, I think underneath that was probably a woman whose husband was basically a crazed witch hunter. And I just had to kind of, you know, find her and tell her story. So she's one of the main characters. The other main character is her lady in waiting, Kirsten. So they have, she's a mysterious character, Kirsten, and she has a story to tell about why she's coming to Scotland on the ship. And our third character is a Scottish woman from North Berwick, who of course is accused of being a witch. So I've had my head in this story for such a long time, and it's really nice to start talking about it, because even recently over the summer, I wasn't quite sure what the ending was. You know, I was thinking my way through it. So that's kind of where we are with it. And I'm just really fascinated to see how that all kind of turns out in terms of covers and things like that. So that's the next stage, and a million billion more edits.
What's really fascinating is I'm reading a book called Witches of Bardo.
Yeah, yes,
and it mentions demonology.
It does. I mean, there's lots and lots of witch books now that it's called. I think we're calling it Witchlit. So I think what I like about that is it's a mixture of crime, and it's a mixture of kind of feminism and history, and it's because all of these elements are in there. Just really looking at, you know, kind of, you know, just looking at what actually happened, and the methods that were used to extract confessions from women, and really why were people, you know, targeting women as witches. You know, it was usually to do with, you know, wanting something like their land, or, you know, or things like that. So it's just a really interesting.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really got me into that was Sydney Moore's Essex Witch Museum series.
Oh,
and they're like quite a straight crime series. That I want to say the straight crime. There's a bit of a paranormal suggestion in them often, but not necessarily. You know, they normally have a rational explanation.
Yeah.
But they always link to real Essex witches.
Yeah, I think you make, well, for me, I wanted to make a decision about whether I was going to have anything paranormal in it, and I think for me I was just never going to do that, because it just didn't feel like it was kind of missing the point. If I did that, I wanted it to be like just real women, you know. And yes, some of them did do spells. I mean, there's no doubt that people were trying to change their circumstances through charms and enchantments, and, you know, wishing and drawing marks on the wall. I mean, that was all definitely happening at the time. But so there's no kind of supernatural element in the King's Witches, you know, and that's quite deliberate.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be very different anyway, because yours is very historical. The ones I were talking about, contemporary, but kind of look back in the past.
Yeah, and I mean, when I wrote The Maiden, I said I'm never writing another, you know, 17th century book, because you can't, you know, you've got to think about everything. You know, what did they have to eat? What did they have to drink? You know, what were they wearing? And of course, then I ended up writing something which was set 100 years earlier and was even more complicated in terms of, you know, I mean, they really didn't have a lot, because when you're writing a book, you can use these things as props. You know, let's go and have a coffee. You know, let's have a glass of wine. It's such a useful way to get your characters moving around the place, and to give colour to the reader of the room. And you're really having to go and imagine some of these, buildings, and maybe look at, you know, for example, Holyrood House, which is the Palace of Holyrood in Edinburgh, and that's still there, but it's completely different. You know, they completely rebuilt it, so it's you don't know what it was like inside, or trying to imagine, you know, what did you eat, you know. And I found a really interesting list of foods that Mary Queen of Scots had because she was James's mother, King James the First, of Britain's mother. And she had quite exotic foods. You know, she had ginger and salmon and, you know, marmalade and all of this. So she was, you know, there was quite a lot of, you know, stuff going on. So that's helpful because you can then bring all this beautiful kind of colour onto the, for example, into the banqueting hall. But some of it was really difficult because I was trying to work out, you know, what did they have on the floor? Did they have, you know, tiles or, you know, and yeah, so really, you know, really sort of painstaking work to kind of make sure that you're kind of getting everything right.
Do you think that carrying on then you would continue to write historical fiction, or do you think you'd ever move up to kind of more contemporary?
I think that I probably write more historical books, but I feel like there's a contemporary book coming into my head, and I would like to have a chance at doing that. But it's only just a little flicker of an idea that I've got. And so for the time being, I think I would concentrate on historical, sort of on that little borderline of crime, historical, and kind of, you know, and I don't, you know, so just, you know, retelling. So just kind of picking my subjects quite carefully, and just, you know, just on that kind of, in that little middle ground between all of these things. Because I wouldn't say that my books are like, you know, high, you know, they're not deepest crime, you know, but usually there's a crime element in there. So just getting in that little flash of historical, that kind of written in a way that, you know, has nice colour in it, but also just giving the reader just a wee bit of mystery as well.
So, do you have a release date for the King's Witches?
I think it's June. It's June. So the Maiden comes out in paperback in February, which is the next thing that's going to happen. So it's been in hardback all this time, and it'll be in hardback over Christmas as well, and then it will come out in paperback in February, and then the King's Witches will come out in June in hardback. That's the plan. And so sometimes I think dates can change, can't they? But that's what we've got so far. So I'm hoping that King's Witches will be on, but I think it will be on, you know, proofs will be coming out. I think they're trying to get some proofs out as soon as they can. So that's the plan. So proofs will probably be coming out towards the end of the year, I think, really.
Exciting times. Leslie has said that she's looked at The Maiden and thinks she'd like it. Leslie, I gave it 5 stars. It's my book of the year so far.
Oh,
that might swing it for you.
It's so nice though, because I mean, it's just such a joy when people enjoy it, you know, because when you read reviews, you know, sometimes, you know, it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, is it? And so I read reviews, and I sometimes think, oh my goodness, Kate, stop reading reviews. But then when you get a nice one, you think, oh, do you know, that's really lovely. And you're also interested in what other books people are reading as well. You know, what sort of books people like. If you like The Maiden, you know, what sort of books people like. Because I liked Burial Rites. I don't know if anybody's read Burial Rites. And I like the Confessions of Fanny Langton as well. So those were kind of books I was reading around the time that I was thinking about The Maiden.
I was on they do like public kind of judging committees for the Guardian First Book Award. And I was on one of those when the year that Burial Rites was in it. And it was my winner that year. I would have.
Yeah, I thought it was a remarkable book. Just an absolutely remarkable piece of writing. You know, sometimes I look at bits of books to think, you know, what's a really good ending? What's a really good beginning? What's a really good way of introducing a character? And I just thought there was so much of that, which just took my breath away, really. It was incredible. And it really inspired you to then want to do, you know, to try and do something yourself.
Well, you achieved it really well with Maiden.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
But it's definitely I know what you were saying about it maybe not being what people think of as a definite crime book, but it is a crime book, isn't it? Because it's all about a crime and like the motives of the crime, and
it's a crime. I think it's a crime book. I think it's like you said, exactly the thing that you said at the start, which encapsulated it. It's not so much it's not so much a who done it, but why done it.
Yeah.
And also one of somebody who read it recently said to me, they sort of knew what was going to happen, but they couldn't work out how I was going to get there. It was, how is this going to, how are we going to get from here to here, and how is it all going to fall into place? So, and there are twists and turns in there. Actually, I think that's what editors are good at, because you kind of write a manuscript, and then an editor will come along and look at it and go, oh, we need a little plot twist here, and that's just what they're so good at, and helping you to make it into something which is more of a roller coaster, for the reader.
I realised, but most of the way through our chat, we should probably explain where Heather is, who's not with us.
Heather Derwent, so she's written Things We Do to Our Friends, which I've read, and I have to say I absolutely loved it. I don't know if anybody else has read it. So Things We Do to Our Friends is, let me think, it's a dark academia book set in sort of in contemporary Edinburgh, and it's about a group of friends at Edinburgh University involved in a very toxic friendship, and things go quite badly wrong. It's quite gothic, and it's kind of mixes up the kind of grandiose, new town of Edinburgh, the kind of dark side, and explores particularly toxic women's friendships. I actually read that ages ago, and I just loved it. So Heather's on the debut shortlist, and she was on the McIlvanney long list as well. And she's on maternity leave just now, so that's why she's not here.
Yeah. Better explained than I would have done that.
I just loved it, and I honestly think that if you like your contemporary crime and you like a bit of dark academia, then you're going to absolutely love Heather's book. Yeah.
To be honest, I don't think, and I will eventually make my way all through both shortlists, is there's never a bad book on them. I'd never know how the judges will pick. Like, we've interviewed the shortlist for about 3 years or more now, and every year you're always like, how are they going to choose a winner?
I don't know how they do it either, and I would hate to be a judge. Because I would just think, well, there's always merits. There's merits on either one. But isn't that amazing that there's so much, and actually so many different crime books as well? Because The Maiden's so different from Things We Do to Our Friends, which is so different from Squeaky Clean, which is the other, and they've all just got their own completely strong identities, I think, of what they're doing. And I just think it's great that there's so much in Scottish crime fiction, and it's great that there's debuts are just getting this great opportunity to be heard. I mean, it's just fantastic.
I think that's one of the joys of the McIlvanney and the debut prize, though, is that they seem to be very broad in their scope of who they'll involve. The types of crime they'll look at, the types of publishers they'll look at.
Yeah,
they just seem to be very kind of encompassing of everything.
Yeah, I think it is. I think they've broadened the criteria more recently, and I think I'm not sure. I think they do quite well with it. I think the independent publishers do quite well in it as well. I don't know for sure because I'm not. My publisher is a bigger one. It's Pan Macmillan. So, but I think that some of the smaller indie presses do quite well in these types of things.
Yeah, they do. And one of the things Craig Russell was saying yesterday when we were talking to him, he was kind of singing in the praises of Bloody Scotland for maybe keeping up that, great reputation that Scottish crime fiction has, because you were saying you'd come through Pitch Perfect and things like, he was using things like Pitch Perfect and Crime in the Spotlight to kind of highlight all the things they do to support authors.
They do, and it is amazing, because there's always the temptation to think, you know, that all the writing is in London, but we've got such a strong Scottish identity as being, you know, lovers of crime fiction, and supporters. Yes, I mean, I think Bloody Scotland has just been, what an incredible event it is, because it gives people a real, you know, as you say, the spotlight, but it literally puts the spotlight on people who are just trying to sort of, you know, push a little bit and get themselves out there, and it's such a welcoming community as well, that, you know, it's all fun, you know, it's just a really good thing to be part of, and just to enjoy as a celebration as well of writing.
So apart from the debut panel, are you doing any other events at it?
No, I'm just doing the debut panel, but I'm going to go to Pitch Perfect, which I think is on the Sunday, and I think there's about is there maybe about 8 people who are going to be pitching their novels. So I just want to sit and watch that and just make my decision about who I think I should, you know, just who I think should win it, and see if my opinion matches the winner. I think that's a really, so yeah, that's a big highlight for me. And so I'm not doing I'm doing that, and then I think the next big thing I'm doing is the Birmingham Literature Festival, which is on the 6th of October. It's a Friday, and I'm going to be taking part in the Women's Prize Discoveries panel with my agent Viola Hayden, and we're going to be talking about how to get published, and the kind of things that you know, helpful things that to bear in mind if you're trying to sort of get yourself into that kind of world. So that's in Birmingham. So I'm really looking forward to, you know, to taking part in that and having that discussion.
That sounds pretty good. I didn't know Birmingham had a literature festival. You mentioned them the other day.
Yeah. I think they are. I don't know how long it's been running, but the event is, and I don't know who else is at the event actually, but I'm really excited about that, and just and the women's. So that's the Women's Prize. They've got a little a subsidiary called the Discoveries, which is just for people, and I think it's a Curtis Brown agency that gets involved in that, and they just run a competition every year for unpublished writers.
I mean, it's good that there's so many opportunities out there, isn't it, for kind of unpublished writers?
Yeah, they are, and it's very difficult, I think, when you're just, you know, when you're thinking about whether or not to kind of take the plunge and maybe trying things, and, you know, things are not working. It's really, really difficult, but it's absolutely worth just having a shot at it. And that's what I always say to people. Actually, when I went into Pitch Perfect, I didn't quite know if the Maiden, as the idea at the time, was even a crime novel. But I just thought, well, I'm just gonna go for it anyway. And it's about just kind of, I think it's about just don't count yourself out, and to try to put yourself, you know, forward as much as you can. And, you know, it's because people really do want to read good stories.
So the other thing that came up in our chat yesterday was the importance of picking out a good outfit for the event. Craig Russell said the year he won with Hyde, I think it was, he was so convinced he wasn't going to win, he wore a terrible outfit.
Oh no!
And it was really saddened that the pictures made him look like a disreputable nightclub owner, was his description.
Well, yeah, but you don't know if you're tempting fate, do you? By getting all dressed up and then you don't win.
Yeah, well, we were discussing this. We were wondering if the strategy is maybe to have a terrible outfit then.
Oh no!
So that you do win. And then
well, I've got to do the panel anyway, so I've got to wear. I can't just turn up in my pajamas, unfortunately. But I have done a lot of events, and you do have to get dressed up. But the best part of that is just coming home and putting your pajamas back on again, because I think that being a writer, you are quite an introvert, you know. And when I do an event, you know, and you're meeting lots of people, and I get such a buzz out of it. But then afterwards, I just feel really, you know, really tired, and I think, oh my goodness, you know, and I quite like to just sort of curl up, you know, with a book and just chill out. But I definitely will not wear my pajamas to Bloody Scotland because I'll just frighten people.
Just in case you win. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly.
I mean, in with a good chance.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I just think it's, you know, I think I've done pretty well to get this far, to be honest with you. That's it. That's it.
Well, like we said at the beginning, isn't it? It's an amazing, both of them are amazing lists to be part of. And I would imagine being longlisted for the, yeah, you can start a new trend. Being longlisted for the McIlvenney must be like a massive honour as well. Because there were people like Ian Rankin and stuff on the long list, weren't there?
I know. Yep. All the big names were up there. And so that was, you know, that was a real, I mean, that's quite, I think that's the moment at which you kind of realise that you have done something. So yeah, it was, you know, it's that. But then you think, oh, and I remember I also felt frightened because I thought, oh no, everybody's going to think I'm going to write another book that's going to do all of these things. And then I get writer's block, and I couldn't do another paragraph of the King's Witches because I was worried. And so it's a funny old thing, and I do have to switch it off because it's, you know, it's great, but then you have to say, right, but what's this all about? What's the important thing, and what do I enjoy? And what I enjoy is writing, and I can disappear into a world when I'm writing in the way that I disappear into a world when I'm reading, and that's, to me, that's the most important thing. It's the pleasure that I get out of that. And I notice when I'm writing, if I'm really involved with my book, I'm not even sitting at, you know, at the desk. I'm actually on the sofa with a laptop as if I was reading a book, which is, I actually ended up had to get physiotherapy on my shoulder because I was like sitting like this. But I'm doing it as a reader. So I'm writing, but I'm also a reader. And to me, that's just kind of like I think it's my comfort zone. So that's, to be able to do that is just a really good pleasure, you know, just to kind of get lost in those worlds.
Well, I think it's a thing for a lot of authors, and that second kind of book syndrome of like getting the next one out and hoping that people will like it as much.
I'm utterly terrified. You know, I can't lie, because the problem with The Maiden is there was just no expectations at all. I had no expectations. I just kept on being surprised and delighted. So, you know, where do you go from there? It's a difficult position to be in. And you get good reviews and you get things that people say, oh, how much they enjoyed it. You think, oh gosh. So what I've tried to do really is think about, I have an image in my head of who the reader is. And I think, you know, is this reader going to like this? Is this what they would expect? You're really conscious of trying to get the King's Witches to be kind of in the same place as The Maiden, but not quite, but giving something slightly different. So it's not a repeat, but doing kind of similar things.
I think what you should take from The Maiden, and this is something I'm thinking of another conversation I had with an author that was quite similar, is that you've shown that you can write a really accomplished novel with really great characters. You obviously know what you're doing, so book 2.
Thank you.
That's me saying you've got all those novels.
Manuscript.
I think it's. I mean, if you produce something as good as The Maiden, you know what you're doing.
And it is, but it's hard work. And I spent the summer, you know, this is how unglamorous it is. I went on holiday. You know, I had a couple of weeks away. One to Florence and with my partner, and he's out, you know, enjoying the sunshine, and I was, you know, doing this. And then another week later was in Amsterdam with, you know, some friends on a big, you know, let's have fun, let's have a great week in Amsterdam. And my friend, she was getting up and going to the spa in the hotel and having a lovely swim, and I was sitting in this hotel room at 7 o'clock, setting my alarm for 7 o'clock in the morning and drinking instant coffee just to get 2 hours done of this manuscript. So it was, you know, it was pretty hard, pretty grueling.
Yeah, and people think writing's so glamorous. Korean.
It's not. It's really not. But it's you know, it's good, and actually, you know, I'm so pleased that I did it, because then, you know, I was kind of thought, you know, actually I've tried, you know, and when I was reading it back the other day, I just think I think that it was worth that pain, you know, to kind of to get there. But yeah, it's not the easy road.
Well, I guess the challenge for you as well, writing them set so far back, like you said, is not only just kind of what they were wearing and what they were eating and things like that, but it's also like the language that's used, and there must be so much research to get things right.
When you were reading The Maiden, I mean, I don't know if it came across, but I felt I was trying to talk in the way that what we would talk nowadays, rather than giving it a bit, you know. I just think that's the barrier if you're introducing oldie worldy language. So I think it's quite modern, but there was, you know, for example, but without having words in it, I did check words in the dictionary to make sure that they were a real word in that time. So I was, you know, I was making sure there was not a word that was anachronistic, that was kind of coming across as being, well, they wouldn't have said that, you know, just that word had not been invented back then.
Fair enough. We've only got a few minutes left. So do you want to finish off by reminding people what they're going to go and buy?
Yeah,
on pre-order in the case of the King's Riches.
I'm going to plug my laptop in before I do that, because I've just had a notification that it's going to run out of battery. So I'm just going to plug it in. Sorry, bear with me. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
what am I doing? Am I doing a...
Yeah, go with it.
So this is all right. So this is the Maiden. Am I reading, or do you just want me to show it off beautifully?
Show it off and give us a summation for people like Leslie who are going to go away and maybe buy it.
So here we go. So this is my lovely. So this is my Waterston's edition, which I don't think they have this anymore. This is a spread edition, which is so beautiful. Have you got one of these? You got proof. So,
yeah.
So the Maiden, here we go. It's got the most beautiful cover, which was designed by Charlotte Day, and I'm absolutely thrilled with it. The Maiden. It's as I say, it's a historical novel, and it's set in 17th century Scotland. And it's a retelling of a true story that happened in the village that I grew up in, when Lady Christian Nimmo was sentenced to death for murdering her lover, Lord James Forrester. And she was sentenced to death at Scotland's guillotine, which was known as the Maiden. That was the nickname that they all had for it. And the Maiden was actually kind of invented before the real guillotine in France. And they used it for about 150 years in Scotland to execute noble people, because it was seen as better than having head chopped off or being hung. It was kind of like a really good way to be executed. So, and you can still see the Maiden. It's on display at the National Museum of Scotland in the Kingdom of the Scots. It's on permanent exhibition there, besides some really interesting displays about the Scottish witches as well.
Because there was a whole campaign about the Scottish witches, I think. And one of our admins was talking about it.
Yes, there's a campaign to have the witches pardoned. There's a campaign also to have a better memorial for them, because there's a memorial on Castle Hill where they were executed, they were burned, and all we've got up there is a tiny little slab that says, you know, this is where the witches were burned. And actually, there's a movement to have a much more suitable memorial to the men and women who were obviously wrongly executed.
And then Donna, just before we finish, Donna said she looks forward to seeing you in Scotland and hopefully getting a signed copy of the Maiden.
That's great, Donna. I'll be there from the Friday night till the Sunday. So I'll be really looking forward to meeting people.
You can't miss Donna. She has bright pink hair.
Well, now I know.
So you'll know who she is when you see her. And Sam said thanks. Best of luck.
Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for watching.
Yeah, thank you for joining me.